Can you imagine your child being abducted, not by a stranger, but by the other parent? It's every parent's nightmare. Today on Family Matters, child abduction.
Separation and divorce are difficult. You have rights. We fight for them.
Why do people hire family lawyers? The most important reason is to protect their children. I'm John Schumann, the head of the family law group at Devery Smith Frank. Clients also want to protect themselves, protect their finances, and plan for their future. Contact me at 416-446-5847 or at www.deverylaw.ca. We will protect and guide you.
At the Watson Gopel Family Law Group, our focus is to work with our clients to keep costs, conflict, and emotional stress low while trying to achieve favorable legal results. Our lawyers are skilled in traditional family law litigation, but we pride ourselves on promoting innovative out-of-court options such as mediation, arbitration, collaborative law, and parenting coordination. Your family law issues are unique, and our approach reflects that. Watson Gopel, contact us today.
Did you know that in most child abduction cases, the abductor is actually the child's parent? Some parents are so angry and spiteful and so determined to deprive the other parent of their children that they will defy court orders, abduct their children, and disappear. What can be done to protect your child from being abducted? And what help is available for parents who find themselves in this horrendous situation? That's the topic of our discussion today. Let's meet our first guest, Dr. Richard Warshak, who is a highly respected psychologist who specializes in high-conflict divorce cases. Dr. Warshak, thank you for being on the show.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, you have 35 years' experience as one of the most internationally renowned psychologists. I imagine that you have seen your share of child abduction situations.
Yes, I have. You get to know the kinds of parents who are more likely to do this and how it affects the children. You know, the parents who abduct their children, they think they're doing the right thing. Either they think the children don't need the other parent, or they think the children need protection from the other parent.
Or to be rescued from some risk of harm that they've perceived.
Yes, that's right. They worry about that, and then they also have a group of family and friends, sometimes underground groups, to help them take the child, to give them food and shelter. They think they're doing the right thing.
Well, they must have no respect for the system then, because even if there was a risk of harm, they don't need to abduct to deal with it.
These are parents who feel that the system failed them. They think that the courts got it wrong, or that the courts are going to get it wrong, and they feel desperate. Most of them think they're doing the right thing. Now, there are some parents, a smaller group, who really don't care. They have contempt for authority, and they view the children as weapons of war. And they enjoy exercising power and control, or the children are their battle trophies. And then there's an even smaller group of parents who are just so obsessed with getting their family back, and they feel if they can't have the family, no one can. And
these are very dangerous people.
These are very dangerous people.
So what are the warning signs? You know, I have to tell you, in court, it's very frequent that we will hear a parent say, I'm afraid the other parent's going to abduct the child. Sometimes people threaten these things and they don't really mean it. They're just upset. But in a small percentage of cases, it actually happens. Is there a way to predict the kind of behavior that would indicate that this person is a real risk of an abductor?
The best way to predict is if they've abducted before. If they've done it in the past, they could do it again. If they have close ties to another country, and if it was a mixed culture marriage, and they've never quite felt comfortable in the culture they're living in, they want to get back to their roots, and they're willing to take the children from their own roots in order for the parent to be around their country. They denigrate the country they've been living in, and they idealize the other country. They have a history of violent behavior or impulsive behavior, or sometimes they're so obsessed with you that they continue to call, show up at your door. These are the ones who you have to worry are going to act on the threat.
And if you suspect that a person is actually going to do it and there's some basis for it, are there things that you can do in terms of how you manage that person? Let's say there's a court order, you have to provide visitation, you don't want to be in contempt of court by denying it. What can you do in the way you manage a person like that to minimize that risk?
It's very important if the other parent doesn't follow the court order, so they don't return the children at the right time, that you immediately enlist legal help to make sure that the court orders are enforced. The parents need to know that they're not going to get away with violating the court order, so that's very important. It's also important to do preventative things, to let the children know that there are certain secrets they should not be keeping. And if they hear anything about, mommy or daddy says we're moving somewhere, that they need to tell you about that.
So you should actually kind of brief your children? I would think that might upset them.
If there's a high risk of abduction, it's better for the children to know what they can do to help themselves.
But then they're going to run to the other parent and say, oh, mommy or daddy told me to tell them if you look like you might be moving or quitting your job or something.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. The other parent needs to know that they need to be put on notice that they can't do that. The other thing is that the parent who abducts the children oftentimes will tell them, your other parent, the left behind parent, doesn't really love you. In some cases they'll say they're dead. And the children need to be reassured that that is never true. I'll never stop loving you. Don't believe it if anyone tells you that.
I should just mention you have actually covered a lot of this in your book, which is quite an internationally renowned book, Divorce Poison. And
Yes.
I think it's worth mentioning that people can get more information about the kinds of tips that they need to keep in mind to be alert if they suspect that an abduction might be a possibility in their life.
Exactly. There are precautions you can take ahead of time. Make sure you have current photographs of the children, passport information, things like that, and tips on what to do if it does happen.
Let me ask you about what happens afterwards. Let's assume that an abducted child has been found. I would imagine there's a lot of work that needs to be done. A lot of support has to be put in place for children who are returned from the place where they were abducted to.
Yes, because so often the children are taught either to hate the other parent or to fear the other parent, and they've missed out on all the experiences that help them feel secure with the left behind parent, and now all of a sudden they find themselves returned to that parent who may be a stranger in their lives and maybe someone they've been taught to fear. So that parent needs to be very patient, surround the child with love, but don't expect the child to recover such positive feelings too quickly, and try to embed the child in the community, in the school, in extracurricular activities. Reassure the child that you don't blame him or her for the abduction, and you don't blame them for the negative attitudes either. They're victims.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Dr. Warshak, for taking the time to be with us today. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will meet the president of Child Find Canada, Cyrstal-Dunahee. Don't go away.
Justice Brownstone's wardrobe is provided by D.G. Bremner & Company, a luxury sportswear retailer for men. Visit dgbremner.com.
Separation and divorce are difficult. You have rights. We fight for them.
Hello, I'm Michael James O'Connor. Family law requires sensitivity, flexibility, and confidentiality. The lawyers at McConn & Beon, O'Connor & Peterson are trained to use all avenues available, including alternative dispute resolution, mediation, and litigation. Our family lawyers are equipped to handle your needs in a sensitive and positive way. We can help. Please call.
Welcome back to our discussion of child abduction. I'm pleased to welcome our next guest, who is the president of Child Find Canada, Cyrstal-Dunahee. Cyrstal, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. What does Child Find do?
Child Find Canada, or Child Find agencies across Canada, work with families with getting the information out there that they need to keep their children safe. We do identification kits and give them information for safety tips and how to communicate with their children when the time arises. Well, before the time arises, like just to keep the kids safe, like the tools that they need to keep themselves safe.
And do you actually have involvement with the law enforcement authorities, the police as well?
Yes, if we're called upon, we do work with the police department and share the information that we receive from the families, or if we receive tips that come in through our 1-800 number, they are then passed on to the police department in the area that is involved with the child.
And is it fair to say that every major jurisdiction in North America has an organization similar to Child Find?
Yes, it is. Yeah, across Canada and throughout the United States.
So for more information on the area that you want to find out about, you can always go to our website or the Child Find website. Now, you yourself are involved with Child Find because of a personal tragedy in your family.
Yes.
And we will be discussing that on our website as well. Your own child was abducted many years ago and never found.
Right.
And that was an incident that had nothing to do with abduction by a parent.
Correct.
And that's very rare, isn't it?
It is very rare.
The majority of abductions are by parents.
Yes, they are. The number of cases that we're dealing with is just over 200 cases throughout Canada dealing with parental abduction.
200 cases a year in Canada of child abduction.
Yes.
And I would imagine in the United States it's tenfold.
Yeah.
So what kinds of situations are you seeing? Where are these people abducting their children to? Who are these people?
They're the regular run-of-the-mill people that you wouldn't think there was any issues. If they're from a foreign country, they could be taking their child back to the foreign country because they're safe. They feel they're safer there. They're above the law within Canada, that they feel that they can just go against a court order that states that the child is to be with one of the parents.
And what kind of success rate does Child Find have in assisting parents to find their abducted children?
Every case is handled on a case-by-case portfolio, depending on the circumstances and the difficulty of the case and where they have taken the child to, how the family members are helping the parent that has taken the child. Right. Everything is very difficult it's hard to put a success against it. Everything takes time. I
would imagine that the risk of an abduction is greater with younger children than adolescents and teenagers. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's what the records do reflect, is that the children of younger age are the more vulnerable ones to be taken by the parent.
If a parent who's watching this show has real worries that their child might be abducted by the other parent, what can they do to minimize that risk? The
first step would be to make sure that their court order is very specific on where the residence of the child. If you are the sole caregiver for that child, that your order stipulates that the child is at your residence. Visitation timelines are clearly specified.
So you want a very clear wording in your court order or separation agreement specifying where the child should be at all times and the conditions under which the child can leave the country?
Yes.
Okay, what else?
Yeah, and within that order, if you do feel that there is a flight risk, that it be stipulated that it be a supervised visitation. Talking to the children, if they're of the age that they're able to understand, so that they're aware that there could be a situation come up, and let them know that you would never give up on them. You would never say you didn't want your child. And then being in contact with the caregivers, with any schools, just to make sure that they're aware that you have this concern, and you would let them know.
So daycare centers?
Yeah.
And schools? And when you say to talk to your children, I would imagine that could be very frightening. To say to a child, you know, you're going to go for a weekend visit with the other parent, but I'm a little worried that they might not bring you back. I would think that'd be very traumatic for a child to hear that.
It probably would be, but it's probably better to be safe than sorry, that you didn't have that conversation, to let them know that you're just going to go visit your mom or your dad and you'll be back on Monday back to my house, so that they know that you weren't just saying, okay, here, you can take them and I don't want to see them again.
Well, I would imagine that if the child repeats that statement to the access parent, that's going to create a lot of tension and friction between the two parents. Because if the custodial parent is wrong about the prospect of abduction, the access parent's going to be very offended. And I would think, if I might add, that you might want to get legal advice first before you involve a child in a discussion of a risk which may or may not be realistic. You know, because it worries me that some parents may alarm their children unnecessarily. But you are talking about taking specific precautions. What about passports?
Passports are another one, to make sure that you've got them up to date, you know where they're at, so that they can't be duplicated. So
you want to keep all your documentation in order.
Yes.
And in terms of the family and friends of the parent who might be the abductor, is it a good idea to have your lawyer let them know that if they help in the abduction, if they harbor an abducted child, if they assist in the commission of a criminal offense, they can get in trouble themselves? Yes,
if they feel that there's a strong chance that the other party is going to take off with the child, then it's best to have the lawyer do that for you as well, just to get that stronger point out there.
Thank you very much for being on our show, Cyrstal. When we come back after the break, we will meet lawyer Andrew Feldstein, who will explain the international treaty known as the Hague Convention. Stay with us.
People often ask the family lawyers at Devery Smith Frank if we can protect their rights without going to court.
We know how to get people the results they want, through mediation, arbitration, or collaborative law, often without the stress and hostility.
Our full-service firm will protect you, your children, and your finances, in or out of court. Contact us at 416-446-5847 or online at www.deverylaw.ca.
Hello, I'm Michael James O'Connor. Family law requires sensitivity, flexibility, and confidentiality. The lawyers at McConn & Beon, O'Connor & Peterson are trained to use all avenues available, including alternative dispute resolution, mediation, and litigation. Our family lawyers are equipped to handle your needs in a sensitive and positive way. We can help. Please call.
Welcome back to our discussion of child abduction. We're in chambers with family law lawyer Andrew Feldstein. Andrew, I want to talk about the legal implications of child abduction and the Hague Convention, which is an international treaty that is supposed to address the issue of how to get a child back after being abducted. What do you have to say about the Hague Convention?
Well, I think it's a very important convention because it is the convention among various countries that can force a child when abducted to return the child to the place where the child was living before the abduction.
So the government in the country where the child has been taken to will appoint a lawyer to start a court case and get the court to order that the child be sent back.
Exactly.
But it's important to note, isn't it, that it's not every country that the Hague Convention applies to.
Well, it's not just every country, but there's also countries that have signed the convention and don't necessarily follow it as strictly as certain countries like Canada and the United States, as an example.
I think it's important to point out, too, that child abduction is a criminal offense.
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, at least where I practice, it's not usually something that leads to criminal charges, and in my opinion, it should more often.
What kinds of things can parents do from a legal point of view, maybe in their separation agreement or in their court order, to protect themselves and their child if they suspect that there might be an abduction?
Well, firstly, in the court order or separation agreement, they should specifically set out that the child is not permitted to travel without obtaining a notarized travel consent. You may also even want to go as far as dealing with the passport and who has control of the passport to make sure that the other parent can't just take the passport and try to take the child across the border.
And if your child happens to be a citizen of more than one country, you'd have to make sure that the passport office in all of those countries know about the court order.
Absolutely, because sometimes what one parent will do, and I've seen this happen before, is they take the passport from the other country and they use that to remove the child from where they're living.
And sometimes I'm asked in court to make an order that no passport shall be issued for this child without a court order. Because sometimes a passport can be held by the other parent, and unbeknownst to that parent, the other parent goes to the passport office and says it was lost.
Absolutely. In most places you require both parents' signatures on the passport, but it's a good idea. The harder problem is when it's another country that they're a citizen of and they can simply add the child to their passport, and it's a country that won't respect the laws of the United States or Canada.
So what if you are agreeing to allow your spouse, the other parent, to take the child on a vacation to another country? What can you do to maximize the chances that the child is not going to be abducted?
Well, I usually say to my clients, if they have a concern, to do a threat analysis of whether or not they think there's a risk. Does that person own a home? Do they still have a job here? Do they have relatives here?
So do they have a reason to come back?
Exactly. If they don't have a reason to come back, and they're planning on going to a country that is not a signatory to The Hague, or one that the rule of law really isn't applicable in, you're going to be a lot more concerned than if they say, I want to go to Florida, as an example, on vacation, or they want to come to Toronto on vacation, because there is a rule of law, and most likely they will return.
Have you seen cases where a party is required to deposit a large sum of money into court before going on a vacation, so that if they don't bring the child back, the other parent has money that they can use to get the child back, to go there and get the child back?
That's a very rare exception that I've seen argued on a few occasions, but usually if somebody owns a piece of real estate and it's not listed for sale and they have equity in it, in my view, that would usually be enough, because if they don't return the child, you would run to court and try to get an order over that asset to protect it.
Can you give us some examples or case situations that you've dealt with regarding abduction?
I've seen some abductions going as far as, well, the people were together. So it wasn't even a matter of it was a divorce. It was before the divorce took place, where one person took the child and went to a Middle Eastern country where The Hague was not a signatory.
Any chance of getting a child back in that situation?
It is very rare and very difficult to do.
First of all, you'd have to locate the child.
Yes, but frequently you know exactly where the child is when the child's abducted. If somebody goes to Iran, as an example, because that's where their family is, they may very well flaunt to you that they're in Iran. Sometimes they will take the child just across the border on vacation to be with their family in the United States, and they don't see anything wrong with saying they're not going to return the child, or into Canada and say they're not going to return the child. And if they do that, you may know exactly where the child is, but there's a fight as to where should the child be living and which is the right court to deal with it. And if it's in the US or Canada, it's going to happen in the court where the child was living.
Well, there may be people watching this that may be thinking, well, maybe the abducting parent had a good reason to get the child away. Maybe there was abuse going on. What do you say to a person who says, look, sometimes there's a justifiable reason to take a child and get away secretly?
There isn't a justifiable reason to take your child to another jurisdiction. Do it in the jurisdiction you live. Go to court. If you think that person, as an example, is abusive to you and it's a horrible relationship, go to court. Ask for a restraining order. Go ask for custody. And then ask court for permission so that you can relocate if that's where your family is.
So get it taken care of where you're living. Don't just resort to self-help and then hope that the court, wherever you're going to, is going to support what you've done.
Absolutely, because there's very little discretion for a judge when you take the child, other than to order the child back to where the child came from. And in fact, when you've taken the child that way, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because your case in that jurisdiction will be that much harder because you're viewed as an abductor.
Once you've done that, no one's going to trust you.
Absolutely.
So deal with the court, and I think it's obvious, but I should say it, you should go and see a lawyer. You know, if you're in a situation where you need to get out and you think the child's best interests require the child be with you, go and see a lawyer and ask for help. Don't just run away.
Well, anytime you run away, you're asking for trouble. So the best way to do it is exactly as you said. Consult a lawyer. If you can't afford a lawyer, apply for legal aid. Do what you can to get the information so you can deal with it where you live.
I think that's very important advice, and I'm very happy that you were here to give it, because this affects a lot of people and it can have life-altering consequences. Thank you very much for being on our show.
Thank you for having me.
When it's hard to meet or even talk together, put the power of computer software and trained negotiators to work for you. Lawyers, mediators, and families can harness SmartSettle software to produce high-value agreements for separation, estate, and elder care. SmartSettle software can help parties reach an agreement worth 10 to 20% more value for everyone. Get connected, get smart, get settled. Learn more right now at smartsettlefamily.com. It can be difficult to talk with family about estate planning at the best of times. Many families don't talk enough about the issues they face, such as remarriage or the family business.
Hi, I'm Jim Doyle. I help navigate the complexities of today's modern family when it comes to integrating your investment and legacy planning needs. Wouldn't it be nice to see your professional advisors speaking to you with a common voice?
When protecting your legacy is important, ask how Jim Doyle and Investors Group can help.
I'm Lauren McLean. Today on Q&A, our question is, will a court allow a change of school for my child? Firstly, is the transfer in the best interest of the child? A judge will want to see that you as the parent have put your child first and are basing this decision on the needs and best interests of your child. Secondly, have you discussed the school transfer with the other parent? Even if you have sole custody, a judge will want to see that you discussed it with the other parent, particularly if there's an extra cost for the new school. Finally, you must persuade the judge that your child has special needs or talents that cannot be accommodated at his or her current school, but that will be met at the new school. Or secondly, your child has problems such as bullying or negative peer influences, which you or your child feel can be fixed by transferring schools. Given that family separation already is distressing for a child, the need for a change of schools that can also be stressful will need to be compelling.
Thanks for watching. For extended interviews and exclusive content, please visit our website at familymatterstv.com. If you'd like to submit your legal question to our Q&A, go to advicescene.com. I'm Justice Harvey Brownstone. See you next time.